payment should not affect our next electricity bill. Although it is recommended that we review it, the price is fixed the day before.
And they cannot change us. If it has been more expensive because we have had to lift the blackout, it is not our problem. Our marketer will have to assume it.
If we make an estimate of consumption, it should not affect either. The estimates are estimates, and then when there is measurement, they are compensated, with which you are not going to pay more or less. You are going to pay for what you have consumed. For the fixed part of the invoice, the legislation provides discounts for power outages. That would be applied in the first quarter of 2026, but it is only specified in the case that the distributor is responsible for some causes, and we would also be talking about cents.
In this case, which everything indicates that the cause could be the network, we would have to go to an article that provides for a regulation to calculate that compensation, and that regulation has not been developed for 20 years.
So a priori, we will not see any discount. Another thing is that we can claim against the home insurance if we have had damages, such as loss of food, for example.
Those who do not have home insurance would have to claim directly from their marketer.
The blackout could put pressure on the price of electricity from now on, according to experts. The electric grid is going to operate the grid more conservatively, and more conservatively means putting in more gas, basically, and more nuclear, and they are more expensive than renewables. This in the short term, in the long term, because we will have to integrate technologies, they say, that give greater stability to the network.
The blackout on Monday made us see our dependence on electricity reflected. For example, the metro station.
To pay by card. And we are very dependent. Undoubtedly, the feeling of fragility, of vulnerability, appeared in a very significant way.
What he missed the most was electricity to cook or maintain food and medicine.
Only with my trips.
Secondly, that there were no telephones.
The fact of not having contact with anyone, the fact of suddenly not knowing what was going on. In situations of feeling, of self-perception, of vulnerability, the group, the neighborhood, the people with whom I live ordinarily, and whom I greet just day by day, becomes especially important.
9 out of 10 people think that the behavior of their neighbors was good or very good according to the CIS survey on the blackout. It could be seen in the pictures of neighbors around the radios.
We are talking a lot with the neighbor who was there also on the lookout, because she already had a radio, we didn't.
62% of respondents listened to the radio at some point. The most listened to was national radio, a device that is part of the emergency kit proposed by the European Union, and that many agreed on.
I don't have the East kit that I recommend Europe, but I do have a transistor radio. I have candles.
I really didn't have a flashlight or candles, and now you already have. Yes, in case the power goes out again, even if it's not on a national level. 5 days after the blackout, the Socialists put the focus on how quickly the incident was solved. How is it possible that in less than 24 hours we could have regained normalcy? That's the real key, and they promise that the government will get to the bottom of the matter. Meanwhile, today, the leader of Vox accuses the government of making policies based on climate fanaticism, he says, and points him out as guilty.
The big problem is Pedro Sanchez. The infrastructure failure is called Pedro Sánchez.
In the same vein, the popular accuse the executive of incompetence and mismanagement.
We have seen that there are deaths due to this blackout. Whose responsibility is it? From the government?
They put pressure. They want explanations as soon as possible, and that responsibilities are assumed.
If it is not a malfunction, as they have said, and it is not an attack, it can only be incompetence of this government.
A few reproaches that the Socialists, the entire opposition of the Popular Party is based on 6 words, which is the fault of Pedro Sánchez. It doesn't matter when you read it. The thing is that, of course, they don't deceive anyone, calling the opposition a scavenger. The technicians prepare everything to the millimeter inside the Sistine Chapel, with the fireplace already installed. This is the next step. Place the tables and the 2 stoves, the traditional one in which the ballots will be burned, and an auxiliary with chemicals, to ensure that the smoke comes out with a crisp, black or white color. Cardinals will have this electronic control unit and pyrotechnic cartridges of both colors, explains Massimiliano, in charge of the smokes in previous conclaves. The day the smoke turns white, we will know which of them will be Francis' replacement. The journalists chase them in search of some clue that dare not swim. They ask me for a name, and I say it's 133. Only some venture to predict. which will be brief. In these meetings, the election of the new pope is forged, to which Raniero Mancinelli also tries to take the size literally. He is the tailor who has dressed the last three pontiffs, and, even without receiving the official commission from the Vatican, he already prepares casullas in 3 different sizes.
I don't know about balconies.
The day she goes out on the balcony, I think one of them will fit her well, or at least almost well, if not perfect for sure, with the job done. Mancinelli waits patiently for the time to come.
There are only a few days left until the doors of a whole symbol are closed. Every day, more than 20,000 people visit the Sistine Chapel. Meanwhile, where to look is easy to get lost, so we have talked to art historians. He has visited her at least 7 times.
It's a space that always catches you.
Who know this Renaissance jewel well. A job. Michelangelo didn't want to do it, which became grudging.
I always said I'm not a painter, I'm a sculptor.
But of course, let's see who says no. I am going to honor you above all the master painters of Italy. Commissioned by a pope. I am not afraid, Holiness. So there we have it, centuries later. Thanks to this virtual tour on the Vatican website, we can move freely and look at ourselves.
We are approaching the final judgment.
In the details.
This intense blue color that Michelangelo was able to use, because basically the Pope was able to cover the costs of buying lapis lazuli, and this powder that was very expensive.
We are going to ask you now to turn your gaze towards San Bartolome. Because among so many faces, in that skin that he holds is that of Michelangelo himself. It's a self-portrait. This is how he signed the chapel. That's his signature. If you have been there, you know that you have to do a whole cervical exercise to appreciate the one that is maybe the creation of Adam, the most famous image of its imposing vault. In the year 1990, a doctor named Metzberger explained that it symbolized a human brain. This gesture has been replicated thousands of times until it transcends.
They have become merchandising.
As a pop icon, Adam and company will be witnesses of that conclave that was. It will keep the rest of the world on edge.
Almost 50 people were injured in the Kharkiv region of Ukraine, including a child. The local prosecutor's office accuses Moscow of using drones with thermobaric explosive warheads, weapons that produce explosions with very high temperatures, against civilians. A massive attack, says the mayor of Kharkiv. In total, all over Ukraine, Russia would have launched 183 drones tonight. Anti-aircraft defenses have intercepted just over 40%, according to data from the Ukrainian army. Moscow has also launched 2 ballistic missiles. On the other side, in Russia, this image. Ukrainian drones have hit a residential building in the city of Novorossiysk. There are at least 5 injured, including 2 minors. The mayor has declared a state of emergency. Moscow accuses Kiev of massively attacking this Krasnodar region with drones, as well as the annexed Crimea. According to the Russian military, it has managed to repel the vast majority of the 170 drones and 11 missiles launched by Ukraine tonight. Both sides are increasing the number of attacks. They are not moving closer, neither after the agreement for Ukrainian rare earths, nor after this meeting at the Vatican, nor after the brief truce for Easter. After Trump's ultimatum. The loop of violence does not stop. Prince Harry has been living in California for more than 5 years, resigned from his duties as a member of the British royal family, and the government lowered the security level for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Then a legal battle began. But this Friday, the Court of Appeals dismissed his appeal, and in an interview with the BBC, he says he is devastated. He blames the royal house. He assures that King Carlos III does not speak to him because of security issues. But he goes further. He wants reconciliation, and for a clear reason. He doesn't know how long his father has left to live. A year ago, he was diagnosed with cancer. He claims that there is no point in continuing to fight. There were attempts to show unity in the death of Elizabeth II, but the Duke of Sussex now confesses that family members will not forgive him, among other things, for having written a book. And it's hard to forget another explosive interview in which his wife, Meghan Markle, accused the British royals of racism. Buckingham Palace has limited itself to indicating that the justice has rejected all the prince's appeals,